This segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. All right, welcome to Bayou Time. I'm Martin Falls. Always great to see our state representative, Bryan Fontenot, District 55. He's on the set, live and in person. Good to see you, Mr. Rep. How are you?
Hey, Martin, thanks for having me on this morning. I certainly appreciate it.
Anytime. We had some big amendments to vote on. We'll start with that. We also have redistricting, and that's also a big issue that the Supreme Court is weighing in on. But
right.
I guess I've heard some people call it a stunning rejection of the amendments. And me and you were talking before the program, and there you see them. When you go from the four amendments, you know, really 1 percentage point on either side separated them. But just your thoughts. I think you said it perfectly. You said the voters have spoken.
Yeah. So look, we public servants, and we were sent to the Louisiana State Capitol to serve our districts. And I think the people of Louisiana have spoken, and have spoken loudly in this initiative. And it's not our jobs now to go back and to deliver something that they believe is explainable. It's hard to, even for me, to grasp what was transpiring in Constitutional Amendment 2. It took me, we there for 20 plus days, hours and hours on end, studying and reading, and where are we moving money and where is it going? And so clearly I see and hear what the public said. They thought it was too much in one amendment. With all of that said, I think you'll see in some form or fashion, all of these amendments come back. They'll probably come back in a simplistic form. And I think ultimately, in the end, the people are going to vote yes for all of the things that were in 2. It's very difficult to find someone who says they doesn't want to lower their personal income tax. You won't find many people who are going to say they don't want to lower their corporate income tax. You won't find many people that are going to say they don't want to do away with the inventory tax or do away with the corporate franchise tax. So maybe we put all of those in individual amendments, then they'll have a better opportunity to pass. But before that, we heard the conversation around the state that the people want to have a constitutional convention. Well, if we can't pass a 115-page amendment, we certainly can't pass a 300 or 400-page constitutional convention. So I believe that the voice of the people is that they want something that is simpler. It's in layman terms. And at the end of the day, Mark, I don't blame the people for not trusting government. For years and years and years, we've had this disdain trust, and that has built up to it's at a point now. It's polarization. Democrats versus Republican, and who's right and who's wrong. And in the end, on top of all of that, Martin, there was an astronomical amount of misinformation that was put out that led people in fear to go vote no. But either way, it's my job to go back to the Capitol, come up with simpler solutions to deliver for a constitutional amendment. So in the end, we can move from where we've been knowing for years, and that is last place.
Every governor, including Governor Jeff Landry, has had to deal with past administrations. We had the controversial tobacco tax years ago. Where'd the money go? And it sits. I remember when we had levy things going on in Terrebonne Parish. It took us so long to outlive those controversies so people could pass a tax to move forward. But it's almost people got to forget before they can move forward.
Well, look, I tell this this morning or yesterday morning when I woke up and says, look, I can only deal the hand of cards that the public has given me. But that hand of cards has been playing in the state of Louisiana for 40 years. When these things started to turn and the teacher's pension started to become in debt, public pension, we are multi-billion. I don't know if it's $10 billion or $13 billion. These pension plans are in debt. We are paying a note on that. Those things happened in the 1990s. I didn't graduate from Thibodeau High School until 1996. So I'm dealing with my predecessors' issues and trying to make these reform initiatives and unlock some of these statutory, constitutionally dedicated funding sources. So one is what this amendment was going to do was to pay off $2 billion of the teacher's pension debt. But I am dealing with the legislature some of these problems that have festered Louisiana for years and years and years. And we added taxes then to create loopholes to make other taxes. So, we put it into one big package. It done a lot of different things. Some you could say were good, some you could say bad. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to me what Jeff Landry says. It doesn't. At the end of the day, this is public officials' initiative that they have to get across the finish line. And to do that, we have to convince the public that it was in their best interest to vote yes, and we didn't. And that's just our fault.
I was reading some of the comments, and there's going to be some people, and it's their right to do so, that will never, ever pass anything that has a tax on it. They're just tired of taxes. So right off the bat, when you're proposing an amendment, you don't have them. So it's almost like you got to make up that curve, get to zero before you can pass an amendment. So it takes a lot of work to pass these.
It does. But at the end of the day, like I hear people say, oh, the language was very confusing. And I agree with them. It was very confusing. So, but what they need to know is this is language that's going to be embedded into the Louisiana Constitution and to Louisiana law. That does obviously contain legal jargon so that it fits into the scope of the law and prior jurisprudence of cases that have been settled. So, but we have to do a better job, period. This legislative body, the governor, all of us, to extend to the will of the people what they want, and that is simplicity, so they can vote on something they understand and be assured that, one, it truly was a tax cut, two, it truly was securing the $2,000 for teacher pay, and there's never going to be any increases there.
Let's do this. We'll take a break. We'll come back. We'll finish this conversation, do a little redistricting.
Sure.
And as all next, State Representative Bryan Fontenot. Don't go away. This segment was brought to you by Buick. Exceptional by design. This segment is brought to you by Rouse's Markets. Feels like home. All right, we are back with State Representative Bryan Fontenot, District 55. We're talking about the amendments. We're going to brush over that redistricting that's in the Supreme Court. But, Mr. Representative, when you look at this race, it differs from a lot of other races. Is it factual and accurate to say that this was lost in the inner sanctums of the cities? Once you broke out of the cities, the vote changed, but the minorities made this vote.
Yeah, so I think what you're going to see here as the statistical data becomes available, number one, you're going to be hard-pressed ever to find any election in Louisiana's history where minority voters voted at 17% of their total voting population, and white voters only voted at 14%. Statewide turnout's about 21% in this election, but turnout in Orleans Parish alone was greater than 31%. And if you looked at Orleans Parish, they were 91% no on this election. So clearly, the driving force was minority black voters in these typically Democratic voting communities. If you look at the three major metropolitan areas that historically are run by Democrat mayors, if you look at Orleans, East Baton Rouge, and Caddo, accumulatively, they combined for about 150,000 no votes. Statewide, we only lost by maybe 200 plus thousand votes. So of 61 parishes, we only lost by 50,000 votes. In 3 parishes, we lost by 150,000 votes. So, but from my standpoint, I went out and looked throughout Lafourche Parish to see where we were. So I can tell you that in the 6th Ward community, which is going to be Chack Bay, Choctaw, Kramer, the constitutional amendment number 2 passed. If you look in the 10th Ward, the amendment passed. If you looked in Bayou Blues community, the amendment passed. If you looked in Matthews, it passed. The places where it's seen its fate to lose was in the Raceland community and inside the metropolitan area of the city of Thibodaux. And unfortunately, That vote subsequently affected the Thibodeau Volunteer Fire Department, which we know is probably the best volunteer fire department in the country, and their millage failed.
So we can admit the opposition monies, which the governor so explicitly talked about before the election, worked.
It certainly mobilized the vote, but it doesn't take away from the fact that we as legislators have to do a better job of putting things on the ballot for people to understand. And that's what we took.
Simple, simplicity.
Yeah, look, again, people have a distrust in government. And if they can't understand what you're doing with their tax dollars, hey, look, if I didn't understand, I may have that same vote. The fear that was implemented by teachers' unions that this was going to affect their retirement drove those people to be concerned, and they rightfully should be concerned, right? So fear drove those people to the poll.
Isn't that where the conflict come in? Because teachers would be getting a raise, but they're worried about their retirement. So they're playing against their own mindset on which way to vote, when really you're saying maybe break those out?
Yeah, look, I think you put the teachers, stipend, the potential, it's not necessarily a pay raise. It was just securing that pay raise. It was securing the $2,000 stipend.
A bonus?
Well, that's what the state has been giving, right? And now going forward, I mean, I don't know if the money is there available.
I don't think it's in this year's budget, huh?
Well, we won't know until the governor delivers the executive budget. But let me say this, any notion that it may get back in there, it's going to have to be cut. And as you know, because the constitutional changes have failed, the only place for us to cut to give the teachers a pay raise is going to be from the elderly and the poor in Medicaid, Medicare, and the Department of Health, and or from higher education, from Fletcher and Nichols. That's the two places of dollars that can be cut. Now, the cost tag, the price to give the teachers the $2,000 stipend is north of about $190 million a year. So the plan was that the school boards, with the reduction that they would pay towards the retirement system, they could give the raise. And people said, well, if you cut the amount you pay to the retirement system, you're going to hurt the retirement system. The fact is, a percentage that they were paying goes to pay off their debt. It doesn't go to make the system solvent. It was paying off a loan. They have borrowed, or the state has borrowed, billions of dollars to pay off this loan. But again, we did a poor job of messaging that, and it saw its fate because people were concerned. And when people go to the poll to vote for you, they vote for me, they vote for somebody they believe in and trust. And at this point, the message wasn't trustworthy for people to support us.
Yeah, well said. I mean, to the victor goes the spoils. You got to regroup if you're on the other side and redo it. Real quick, like redistricting. I know we only have a minute, but are you following that? I
am following that. So I actually listened to oral arguments, I think last Monday on the United States Supreme Court. It was a little difficult for me to follow along, but where we are, it looks like to me, is that a multitude of cases, the Robinson case, and they were all combined into one cases. I heard conservative judges, Kavanaugh, asking questions about compactness. But at the end of the day, I think this is where we are. I think we're looking at May or June. The question will be, number one, will the Supreme Court accept this map as constitutional or not? And number two, if they do not, the question is, who will the Supreme Court say should redraw the map? Will they say the Shreveport Federal Court, who said they thought it was unconstitutional? Will they be forced to redraw the map? Or will the Supreme Court give the Louisiana legislature the power to redraw the map? And that will dictate what that map will look like, depending on who draws the map.
Yeah, I'd like to get a panel of you guys. I know we have to close here, but because this can get very complicated, so we need to spend a whole show on talking about redistricting.
Yeah, look, this is kind of like constitutional amendments for me. It's taken a year for me to really understand all of the things that go into redistricting.
Mr. State Rep, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. This segment was brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs.